Good evening, I'm Uday Pratap Singh. You're joining us on NewsX and Business World panels on the Indian economy. Our big focus today, of course, remains the current state of the Indian economy and also, of course, how things are really going to go and get back in shape. We have joining us at this point a special panel, as always, on the Indian economy. With us live at this point is Suresh Chukkapalli, Chairman Emeritus, Phoenix Group. We also have Barnik Chitran Maitra, Managing Partner and CEO, India and South Asia. Arthur D. Digital India joining us. B. Tyagarajan, Managing Director, Blue Star is joining us live. Karthik Radia, Managing Partner, Mazars India is joining us live. Dr. Anurag Batra, Editor-in-Chief, Business World is live with us as always on the panel. Welcome all of you and thank you so much for being with us today. Let me actually get started with Mr. Chukkapalli, if I can. Mr. Chukkapalli, how did you really view the announcements made yesterday, the new stimulus made yesterday by the FM? How was it really for you?
And look at unconventional and disruptive challenges in spending the CSR.
Mr. Chukkapalli, are you able to hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
You are not able to hear us?
Yes.
We can.
We can now. We can now. Please go ahead.
Mr. Uday, I'd asked Mr. Chukkapalli that apart from being an entrepreneur who's very successful, he's also somebody who's contributed socially much before COVID in building crematoriums that are sustainable.
Yeah.
He did it as a CSR. And the question I asked Mr. Chukkapalli was that in the hour of COVID in the last 8 months, every business needs to be a social impact business.
Yes.
We need to contribute to the society and not just worry about profits. So, Mr. Chukkapalli, your response to that?
Anurag, thank you for the question, which is very close to my heart. See, CSR has been a part of every business for so many decades. And recently, with the government also pushing the 2% mandatory CSR contribution to the society, is also something which has, pushed the corporates in establishing their own foundations and running the foundations in their own fashion. Many of them do CSR activities around their factories or around their villages and things like that. What we have done is we have done slightly a bit disruptive activity, even though we do also all regular CSR activities like blood donations, scholarships, education programs, and many. But what we have done is 7 years back, we have taken up upgradation of crematorium in Hyderabad. So this is one of the first truly modern crematorium, which I may call, which has received very good response from the public. So today in this crematorium, it looks like a park, and people are so happy when they're coming there to bid favor to their near and dear, instead of getting into a place where they feel very uncomfortable. So I think we have successfully done that, and today we have started promoting this across the country. Almost we have got involved in more than 40 crematoriums directly and indirectly more than 1,000. The latest one we are doing is in Puri, the Eastern Swargadwar. So we are along with the state government, we are building a most modern crematorium there. And we are also doing in UP in Mirzapur. And we are planning to go to Ayodhya, where Bharat Kund, the famous place where King Bharat used to do penance when Lord Ram was in Vanvas. So there is a very old historical cremation ground, which we are planning now to upgrade. And after this, we are very keen on going to Kashi also. So the whole idea is that, we want to see that entire country, looks at these modernizing and upgrading the facilities so that whenever people go there, they don't feel the pain and in addition to the loss of the family member, they don't feel the pain. So definitely, this is one of the disruptive things we have done. We have also done some art and culture centers. We have done lake cleaning, and also we have adopted a 250-acre forest in Hyderabad. So it gives us a lot of energy and pleasure and satisfaction when we do these kind of things. So CSR is something which every entrepreneur, every individual also, in their own might, they contribute to the society. And I'm happy that India, with the cultural heritage we have, and with the giving policy or the heritage we have, I think people, even whatever small they have, they keep giving to others. Yeah.
Mr. Chokkapally, we're doing this discussion. Me and Uday are doing this discussion, the backdrop of the finance minister yesterday, so to say, giving a second stimulus. Day before yesterday, the government of India announced performance-linked incentives for manufacturing. Yesterday, it followed up with another 12 measures. What is your reading of the economy, and where do you think the economy is headed?
I firmly believe that India has a very strong ethos, and the economic base is also very strong. So I should congratulate the government that, the finance minister also, that they are trying to do their best in bringing back the economy into the mainstream. See, we should all appreciate this is an unprecedented, unexpected calamity what we have in this world today. And no one had believed that this kind of thing would happen, and no one would have even planned for this. So in all the worst possibilities and problems we have, I think Indian economy has very, very quickly started coming back to their legs. We have been seeing the GST collections increase. We have been seeing people moving around. We have been seeing 70% travel on airlines. So business has slowly started limping back to normal. And the packages what Government of India is doing is quite good, but they should also try to do much more. Particularly, they should help the banks with more money. They should prepare a policy for NBFCs, because most of the NBFCs today who have been helping the MSMEs and industries and real estate sector and everyone, they are in severe cash crunch. So the Government of India, the Finance Ministry should look at the NBFCs in a different method and see how liquidity can increase with them. Because none of the NBFCs are bankrupt or anything, but they need a lot of stimulus so that they can lend to people and the industry can revive much faster.
Okay, we'll come back to Mr. Chokkapally. Let me bring in Mr. Thiagarajan. Mr. Thiagarajan, you lead a very large company. It's been around for a long time. Summer is normally your peak time, but the summer was a washout for all players in your segment because COVID happened and both supply side was disrupted and so was the demand side. But September, October and part of November looked like they made up for some loss that you saw in the first 5.5 months. Do you think that kind of demand would sustain? And what is your comment on yesterday's announcements by the finance minister?
Good evening, Dr. Batra. Thank you for having me in this show. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Yes, you're right. September, month on month, it has been improving. September, it reached almost 90% of last year level. October, we are seeing little growth. November, I think, will be a significant growth across most of the product categories. Of course, large projects, the sites are not opening, but otherwise, whether it is air conditioners, water purifiers, air coolers, the demand is very, very healthy. To be frank, in the past 7 years, I have not seen a festival season which is very active like today, not only for our products, but across consumer durables, home appliances. You see a lot of demand. It's a real Diwali going on there. Coming to the other product category of ours, commercial refrigeration, all along, even in the month of April, May, we have been witnessing demand from pharma, healthcare sectors and the food delivery sectors. Cold chain equipment or the medical refrigerators, medical freezers, and large cold rooms. And the states are beefing up their capacity for handling vaccine. Pharma manufacturers are beefing up their capacity. So it is across the country, including Tier 3, 4, 5, it's a significant demand growth. With the agricultural income, which is going to be good after a good monsoon, we are finding further surge in demand in Tier 3, 4, 5 towns. Around 65% of our revenue comes from Tier 3, 4, 5. That is growing well and doing significantly well across many product categories. Coming back to the stimulus, fine. We have to also reflect back right from the beginning, the very first package onwards. We were wondering whether government has money, how it will roll out, and what time frame. Some point of a time, we were all impatient. But in retrospect, I think the government has done well, given our economic situation and our demographic. And always you can say something more is required. But I think they have managed it very well.
Yes.
The timing is right. In fact, I will go on to say the very first announcement of RBI and the subsequent announcements, it can be compared with the best in the world in terms of structuring, making it available. And we ourselves were a beneficiary. Though we are a 77-year-old company, we raised NCD. That NCD is out of a RBI scheme. We know several of our vendors who are MSME, they immensely benefited from the credit guarantee scheme. And I know for sure, the first set of announcements, the farmers benefited a lot because we are directly connected with them for cold chain and horticultural produce preservation. Yesterday's announcement, I would say, is again significant.
Yes.
You may call it even icing on cake as far as the my own sector is concerned. Air conditioners fall under that production linked incentive scheme.
Yeah.
And the air conditionings and LED alone is 6,238 crores that has been set aside. We have also witnessed a very smooth, constructive, productive dialogue with the DPI team.
You made an interesting point earlier, Mr. Tyagarajan, and I want to come in there to take your view on what Randeep Guleria has had to say also. Randeep Guleria earlier this week, in fact, director of AIIMS, has said that it could be a challenge in rural India particularly to have the infrastructure needed for vaccine distribution. How then are you, do you view that we can meet the challenge? And how can, companies like yours also help ramp up the rural infrastructure which would be needed for cold temperatures to store the vaccine when it does come perhaps sometime next year?
Excellent question. Contrary to the belief that India is behind in quite a few areas, as far as vaccine is concerned, we are not behind at all. I would compare India with the best in the world because our universal immunization program has been a very successful one. And the primary distribution, secondary distribution, there is reasonable amount of infrastructure that is available. Large number of infants and adults have been immunized every year for a different reason. The only difference now here is that you want to complete the vaccination program at the earliest. In a short span of time, 130 crore people will have to be done. And in that context, if the temperature is going to be 2 to 8 degrees centigrade, we have mapped across the country, I don't think the challenges are formidable. We will be able to still manage it because the vaccine is going to be a fast rotating stuff there, right? It is going to come in and go out daily. Nobody will keep it for 1 or 2 months of time. Second is, in our mind, we think it is a huge volume. It is not. A vial can carry 10 doses. And we know for sure now, there are going to be 2 doses and many vaccines are in 2 to 8 degrees centigrade. If it is going to be minus 40, minus 50, minus 70, I do not think that we have infrastructure at this point of time. Some other solution need to be figured out. And as far as Blue Star is concerned, we enjoy around 70% market share in pharma healthcare segment. And what we are doing is, state government orders are coming in, we are executing it faster because we are stopping everything else because ice cream can wait, vaccine is important in that context. Next is for December, January, February, March, we are running additional shifts. We have planned to double the production in case there is a shortage that is going to happen. I am convinced that latest by January, I think India will start administering at least 1 vaccine.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tyagarajan. And Suresh, you want to make a comment?
Can I chip in into this vaccine? Hyderabad is one of the hub for vaccine research, and one of my dear friend, Bharat Biotech is developing, advanced stage of developing the vaccine, and I know for sure, the vaccines are going to come by December end or January, so as soon as the ICMR gives the approval. They have already started the 3rd phase clinical trials and on about 25,000 subjects. And I'm 100% sure that they'll complete the 3rd phase by end of December. And probably it might take a few more days for the results to come in and ICMR to get approved and things like that. But everyone is gearing up for vaccines. And definitely, as Mr. Tyagarajan said, India is not behind any other country on vaccine development and research. As far as the cooling is concerned, and I'm 100% sure, as I understand from my friends, that the vaccine, the refrigeration temperature is good enough for maintaining the, cooling effect. So I don't really see a very big problem for India in storing the vaccine. And as Mr. Tyagarajan said, the vaccine, the moment it comes out, it may not even stay for 2-3 days, because that's the kind of speed at which the government of India is planning to, distribute the vaccine and administer the vaccine on people. And recently we have seen that they wanted to come out with the same election booth mode of administering the vaccine, like earlier polio they have done. Now they wanted to all the state governments to revive the election booths, all the schools, colleges, wherever elections used to be conducted. So people will just go there and get the vaccine administered.
Community centers.
Yes.
In smaller towns.
Yeah.
Good. Let me bring Mr. Maitra. Mr. Barnik Maitra. Mr. Maitra, you're an advisor to large corporates, big entrepreneurs. Yesterday, you also understand the fiscal issues that India faces. Yesterday, you heard the finance minister, you heard one entrepreneur in Suresh Chukapalli saying what he said. You heard Mr. Tyagarajan talking about how he has benefited, his company has benefited. What's your sense of the package, and where do you see the economy going? When you have conversation with industry captains, what is the sense you get, and what is your personal feeling?
Yes, so let me start with the package first, Dr. Batra. I think the government has a very tight rope to walk when it is designing a package like this. On one side, there's obviously the demand of the industry who wants a lot of direct spending and a lot of direct cash to the vulnerable societies. On the other hand, there's the experience which India had in 2008 when it overreacted to a global crisis and spent too much money. And then the rupee went from 43 rupees to 65 rupees. The inflation went from 4% to 11%. So it's a tight rope. I think that said, I think if you look at what the government has achieved, I think there is no risk of inflation. Our exchange rate is tightly contained. And at the 15% of GDP which the government has claimed, there is a good, I would say 3 to 4% of GDP of direct stimulus which the government has given. So I think the government has made a right mix of initiatives, direct spending, support for the vulnerable, production-linked or job-linked incentives, as well as good capital support from RBI. I think RBI has done a stellar job in providing enough liquidity into the economy. In fact, nearly 50% of...
If I may say, for the first time there is sync. Normally the government and RBI are always at loggerhead. For the first time, the Raisina Hill and, RBI, so to say, are working together. Even the Dalal Street and the Raisina Hill seem to be working together.
No, I think it's an orchestra which is playing. If it's a well-tuned orchestra, then I think it's music for everyone, right? So I think I'm quite happy with the outcomes. I think obviously there are people who say that the government could have done more. Sitting from where I sit, I think the risk of inflation, the risk of a sovereign credit downgrade are important risks. Even with this fiscal, I think the deficit may slip to 10%. Some of it is on our balance sheet, some of it is not on our balance sheet. But still, I think the government has done a good job. On the economy, I'll make a small observation. I think sitting today on the eve of Diwali, I feel more positive of the economy today than I felt last year at this point, right? And there are many reasons for that. If you look at all of the metrics, the industrial index of production is up for the first time in 6 months. The purchasing managers index is up at its highest, it's 7-year high, in fact. Today, Indian households have nearly 21% of savings, which means if people go out there, they start spending. Same point last year around Diwali, this was around 8% or 10%. So if you look at a lot of these metrics, I think I'm far more hopeful.
But Mr. Maitra, a quick follow-up there. Do you believe this is pent-up demand? Is this pent-up demand because of the lockdown? Or is it genuine, are these genuine metrics coming out and genuine signs coming out?
No, or will it be sustained? What Uday is asking, beyond pent-up demand, part of it is pent-up, but will it sustain as a demand? Will it continue beyond Diwali and beyond the wedding season? That's the question Uday is asking.
No, that's a great question. I think it's obviously pent-up demand, but let's take a sector like automotive, right, where actually sales are even more than last October, right? And a lot of sectors, even Tyag was mentioning, is beyond last October. So I think the economy is somewhere pretty close to where we were 2 fiscals back, right? Where obviously there's pent-up demand, but I feel very optimistic for the next fiscal, where India should be again back to where it should be, which is one of the fastest growing economies of the world, right? We should be clocking close to 7% next year. Again, let me clarify, a lot of it is because H1 was a washout, and you'll see a lot of catch up in H2. But I think there is a lot of positive energy. And one of the things which people don't talk about enough, and it's easy to lose in these headlines, is that the government has taken very bold reform measures over the past 6 months.
Those dividends we'll see, whether it's the mining economy, it's done structural reforms. One of the things that this government has done is used crisis to be able to build for medium term and long term. And we'll come to you. But let me bring in Mr. Karthik Radia. Karthik, again, you work with a lot of European companies, a lot of Indian companies. And when you talk to the promoters and CEOs, what is the kind of response you get from them on what is happening to Indian economy, and how do you view yesterday's announcements by the finance minister?
So the recent announcement, which is just the yesterday's one, as we call it as Atmanirbhar Bharat 3.0, which is tuning up to the total of 2,65,080 crores. And with this added to the earlier ones, it is coming to about 15% of the GDP, which is to about 30 lakh crores. Within the 2.65 lakhs, squarely a large part, which is about 55% of this, is going to the production-linked incentive. There were earlier 3 sectors which were called as champion sectors. And now we have addition of 10 more sectors coming into that, which are going to lead the path, which is about 1,45,980 crores of total value. And within that also, if you see, the automobiles and the automotive component is one of the very large winner within this 10 new sectors that have been added, or champion sectors that have been added, amounting to about 57,042 crores. And followed by that is pharmaceutical drugs,
and the telecom networking products and electronics and the textile products, basically. Apart from this, the other very important area is the fertilizer spending subsidy and the real estate incentives, both for the buyers.
20% reduction on the circle rates.
Yes, absolutely, from 10 to 20%. And that makes a lot of sense in terms of the real estate demand, which is only expected to grow, and particularly in the light of Diwali and the festive season.
Yeah.
This is a very good incentive for the real estate side, the real estate development as well as the real estate buyers. So from the buyer standpoint, it's the right time. And again, it is to be noted that this applies to the total value of the flats or the property to be bought should be up to 2 crores. Of course, a lot of expectation there is that it should be raised to 4 or so, but I think this is also a very, very good start for the middle income consumers.
Actual users, not just investors.
Absolutely.
And also in Bombay, you can get an affordable flat in 2 crores. In Delhi, of course, you can get, I would say, a little more than that. And also, Karthik, just to add to that, the automobiles are doing well because there is a need for personal mobility. People want to be safe. Second is also this 10-year rule was a hindrance which is going away. And in terms of homes, for the first time, millennials have realized that they possibly spent more time in their homes, and with the savings of last 8 months, they will possibly spend money on buying real estate for themselves, which they will use for their living as well as now working. Let me go back to Mr. Suresh Chokkapalli.
I have to take, let's Dr. Batra, let's take a very short break at this point, and then after the break, we'll open it up to some larger questions and also rope in Mr. Chokkapalli, as you were saying. Let me just take a very short break at this point. We'll go back to Suresh Chokkapalli and the panel on some larger questions after this short commercial. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back from the break. You're watching NewsX and Business World, special panel on the Indian economy. Before the break, we of course got opening comments from all our esteemed panelists. Now it's time to open it up to some larger questions concerning the economy in various sectors, of course, which our guests represent. Dr. Batra, over to you.
Thank you so much, Uday. Uday, as you rightly asked in the first segment, the key question is, will the demand last beyond November? Is it sustained demand? And is it revival of the economy? Are we turning the corner? That's the trillion-dollar question we need to ask. So let me bring in Mr. Suresh Chokkapalli and ask him, are we seeing a revival of the economy, or is it a K-shaped recovery, which means certain industries continue to grow and certain sectors, because they're contact sectors in the services economy, like hotels, like QSR, like airlines, in spite of the numbers that you hear of airlines, still airlines can do better. So do you see we're turning a corner? Do you see the economy is reviving, or is it too early to pass a judgment on that?
Anurag, I'm very sure and confident the economy is reviving and reviving very fast, because not only the airlines, the hotel industry has also picked up very, very much. If you compare about 6 months to last 2 months, the hotel industry has picked up, the catering industry has picked up. Every single industry is picking up. And the second thing is, the lessons what we have learned from COVID is that there is an opportunity for India in the crisis. The Made in India or Make in India, which was promoted by Honorable Prime Minister, is now picking up. Many countries are now looking at India rather than China. So our government should take advantage of that, moving from China to India. And we have excellent labor force, we have excellent skilled manpower, we have educated people, engineers are available, abundant land is available. The only issue what I would like to request the government today on this forum is that the consistent policies on FDI and exports. The special economic zone policy that they have brought into this country, it was a wonderful policy. But then it kept on getting diluted, and over a period of time, people have realize that there is not much of a benefit for them to get into an SEZ. But if the government can really have a relook, there are many countries, many industries from all these countries to put FDI and look at India as a hub for manufacturing and then re-export from India to Europe and US, because we are also closer to Europe and US than China. And China is no more cheaper because their labor costs have gone up. In fact, Chinese labor are almost 2 to 3 times expensive than Indian labor. So with all these things, and second thing is, the world over, people have now realized that they cannot rely on Chinese business people, because they are facing a lot of problems with Chinese business people, one in language, one in the trust deficit. So all these things are going to be a big benefit for India. And I'm sure Mr. Tyagarajan would agree that even the air conditioners, what they manufacture, or home appliances, there is a huge scope of exports from India. So, two-wheelers are getting exported from India in a big way. But unless government comes in with a single policy, without all these hindrances, one transparent single policy with benefits for exports, I think our foreign exchanges will improve, our jobs will improve. Many technologies are going to flow into India in the defense sector, in many sectors, because everyone is interested now in India rather than China.
Thank you
so
so
I
much.
think
I also want to share a statistics with you. I mean, you're also Consulate General of South Korea, and let's take I want you to guess, and our panelists, how many Japanese companies in India? Take a guess. How many Japanese companies in India? And how many Japanese companies in China? To save time, let me tell you, we have about 1,500 Japanese companies in India and about 65,000 Japanese companies in China. So we can attract many more Japanese, South Korean, European companies to India. So the scope for growth is huge. And that's where I think you're right, a consistent policy framework, even more ease of doing business, and policy certainty will be very, very important. You rightly hit the nail on the head. Mr. Tyagarajan, again.
Before Mr. Tyagarajan comes in, Anurag, why I spoke about this is, earlier we came in with SEZ policy, we said, all these things are exempt, and slowly they said, no, MAT is applicable. And then they brought in many more things, and then they said, the sunset clause is getting over, you can't have more time. So all these things, what we should understand is special economic zones are the stimulus for the country to create more and more employment, more and more foreign reserves, and also getting more technologies for our, country's well-being. So this is very, very important.
Thank you so much for bringing in that. Mr. Tyagarajan, you talked about your numbers. You said in November we may look at a significant growth. Do you think this growth is sustainable? And I'm talking a larger question and not just your company. Do you think the economy is turning around the corner and we can see good days of yesterday?
I think it is going to sustain. It is an important moment for India. So just look at it. We interacted in the month of April, May, June. At that point of time, we thought that many people are going to be wiped out in terms of their wealth and in terms of the companies itself. I think in retrospect, Indian industry has done well. Everybody have bounced back. There are, of course, stress sectors, and their day also will come. They will revive. Now, my own personal estimate is that India will, the contraction will be less than 9 this year. Next year, we have an opportunity to again get back to 6% kind of growth, if not more. And certain things will take time. But the government has done one thing very, very significantly. They are not attempting far too many things at all. There is a agriculture one, there is a rural economy one, there is a urban housing, real estate related one, and the big one is manufacturing. And if they implement all this well, I think it is a defining moment for India. Many of the political issues are behind us now, right? The government is going to focus on job creation, focus on economy. And they have the mandate, and they have grown stronger, and they have become wiser. They are very clear about this.
You're absolutely right. When you're politically strong and you're comfortable, then you structurally change things and you take a long-term view and make things better. You're absolutely right with the by-elections in most states going in favor of the BJP and the Bihar mandate in going for the NDA and BJP. Clearly, the government is sitting pretty, and that confidence will reflect into more wise decisions, as you rightly pointed out.
But Anurag, what I also feel is that the federal government should bring in all the stakeholders. All the state governments should come onto the same platform. Today, the state governments are very, very important to get into ease of doing business, because it is the state subject. They give the permissions, and they need the liquidity. They need the support from the central government in terms of cash crunch and things like that. So I think many states are feeling the cash crunch. So this is the most important time where the central government supports the state governments in every way possible, even going out of the way, so that the state governments can support the industries and also the labor. See, because today several state governments are not able to release the contractual monies to contractors. They're not able to release money for the subsidies which they're supposed to give. So the economy is getting stopped because of that. So the central government
states are the engine of growth. States are the engine of growth.
Exactly.
By the way, the finance minister talked about the money the center has sanctioned very fast to the states. And in another development today, which is related, because if the central government, the federal government's paying capability goes up, part of it will come to states. The central government has written to all the PSUs, the Ministry of Finance, asking for higher dividends because some of the PSUs have done very well. So clearly, in some part of that increased dividend will definitely go to states, or must go to states. Kartik Radia,
but it has to act very fast, and money has to come in quickly to the states. That's very, very important, because
by the way, the finance minister talked about it twice in her address yesterday. So the government does understand that states are the engine of growth, and they need to be kept going. And the role of the federal government is to be able to enable the states' development. And one good thing is, in a lot of states, the central government and the state government are from the same party. So that also ensures faster development. But clearly, we're talking of our country as a nation, and we're talking of country as one whole, mass that moves forward. And clearly, the central government understands it all. Kartik Radia and Barnik Maitra, I want to ask, you both represent global organizations. Yesterday, the Moody's made our ratings marginally better. Now there is this debate for the last 8 months that we are still a very fundamentally strong economy. The demand is good, and every parameter of the economy is a real parameter. We are really strong, and we should impress upon the rating agencies and print more currency. It is a time to print more currency and be able to impress upon rating agency. And some economists and some large players in the economy believe that we shouldn't worry too much about ratings. What do you have to say to this? Kartik Radia first, and then Barnik Maitra.
See, the fact of the life is, while I agree with most of the lists here that we are on a positive trend, but the most important fact is that we as a emerging economy has been impacted the most. In terms of April to June, we got impacted by almost 24% in terms of the slump in GDP. This quarter ending September, we were down by 8.6%. There is no doubt that we are on a recovery trend, but at the same time, we have to remember this is backed by a very strong agricultural economy, and yes, production and the manufacturing sector needs a very special attention here. And some of these stimulus packages have been very helpful. On the rating agencies, there are the standard protocols and the standard processes by which they measure things. India is a slightly dynamic and a very, very different economy. Very difficult to evaluate it using some of the standard parameters. But with what we have in the agricultural sector and the production and manufacturing sector being taken care of, plus I think IT and some of the other exports are doing pretty well on the services side. I think rating is just one part of this whole thing.
Okay. Anurag, Dr. Batra, let me answer your question. See, I'm not a big believer or not a believer at all of the fact that the government should print money, right? I think that's what is a recipe for disaster, given how precariously we are anyway on the fiscal deficit edge, right? That said, I think the ratings agencies, except for Moody's, have been relatively stable over the last 15 years. I think what we should now worry about is not so much the rating agencies, but how to attract structurally low-cost capital into the economy. Because at the end of the day, there is a lot of risk entrepreneurs in the economy need to take. And if all of the risk needs to be paid back on risky money, which is the local money, then the projects become unviable.
Also, the cost of the capital in India is among the highest in the world. So you rightly hit the nail on the fact that the cost of capital has to be lower. And clearly, money is looking to come to India.
Yeah.
If it's not going to go to China, it has to find an outlet elsewhere. And what better market than India? And that's why the Prime Minister on the 5th of March, 5th of November, spoke to all the sovereign funds, inviting them to invest in India. So clearly, the government has been making proactive steps. Let me start with you, Mr.
But if you don't mind, Dr. Batra, let me complete. See, I think work needs to be done to invite them, right?
Okay.
Because I think even for these investors who are going to charge 0.5% coupon rate over 50, 100-year investments, I think the government needs to do more to guarantee security of investment, consistency.
What would be that more? And what would be that more?
No, so if you look at one of the biggest complaint of long-term investors is the changing regulatory framework for big infrastructure projects, whether they be one of the biggest projects where funding was actually the Ahmedabad bullet train project, right, which is a 100-year loan from the Japanese investors, right? Now, barely 5 years down, we're already running so behind schedule, right? So I think our project delivery and execution skills need to be better, and the government needs to be more proactive at the state level to provide land clearances, environment clearances, land acquisition.
Okay.
And a lot of that still needs to be sorted. So while I am a big subscriber that the outlook is positive, but there's still a lot of work to be done on the ground level to realize the potential.
Let's take a concluding statement now, Dr. Batra. We're running out of time. Concluding statement.
It's my favorite question. At the end of the day, we have lessons in lockdown. The last 8 months have showed us new ways of doing business.
Yeah.
It has helped us discover new insights and new strengths that were, so to say, hidden before the COVID. So let me start by asking, and let me start with Barnik Maitra first this time. What's your top lockdown lesson? What's one thing that, as a leader of your company, you imbibe that will help you do well in the future?
No, I think the biggest lesson, I've been very positively surprised by the resilience and the dynamism of India and all my employees in India. I think people took the lockdown in their stride. I think people are working harder than ever. And I think people are very positive about the future. So the resilience and the innovation and creativity to solve around real problems, right? If you were in April and May, we were all worried about labor not coming back to our factories, right? We are worried about our factory capacity utilizations dropping below 40%. See where we are now. Unemployment is better than April, right? Everyone's back working, right? So I think once you've conquered the fear, I think you've conquered everything, right? I think the biggest lesson is the resilience and the ability to conquer fear by just getting there and doing the work.
Okay. Karthik Radia, what's your biggest lockdown lesson?
So risk management is substituted by the word resilience, which is most important now, and everybody from the corporate board has been talking and working around. And the power of conservatism, and there I call cash as an important element. Still, people plays a very important role for the cash management, even today, 6 months down. So the power of conservatism and the resilience.
Mr. Thiagarajan, your top lockdown lessons.
I think Indian industry rose to the occasion, and they are going to reinvent themselves for much higher levels of growth. You will see them investing very aggressively. You will see India growing phenomenally. It is a defining moment for India. That's what I learned.
Okay.
Okay. Last but not the least, Mr. Suresh Chokapalli, your top lockdown lessons and advice to entrepreneurs watching the show.
Anurag, I would say that, we should never take things for granted and always be prepared for any kind of emergency or exigency. That's number one. The second one, what I feel is, business people should always remember and create an emergency business fund, which could, be kept in every year, some corpus kind of thing in terms of like our mothers used to do that, she used to save some money and things like that. And today we have to be very, very clear that electronic database has really created wonders for all of us. Today if we are able to do this, web, conference, so that's thanks to COVID, we are all able to do this. So this is going to be the new India, what I feel. And what matters most is not where from you're working, but you're working and you're on. And also what we have seen today is human life is more important than any economy. So India was able to save that, thanks to the Honorable Prime Minister and all the state governments. They were able to really, be able to contain the, spread of the virus. And yes, we lost many people, but still we are within that 3% or 2% death rate. So that's a great thing for a large population. And I'm extremely...
And dare I say, we are indisciplined. Unlike the Yankees, who were not a very non-verbal society, we don't even wear masks because we have to speak about everything. We're a very, very, very verbose society, and we can be more disciplined as a community. You're so right.
Okay.
I just want to end by asking you, when do you think the economy will be back in full?
We are completely out of time, I'm afraid. Yeah. Okay. Let's do a fastest, rather rapid fire then.
6 months, 12 months, 18 months.
Yeah.
Mr. Chokapalli, how many months will be back?
I feel it will be back in 6 months.
Okay.
The moment the vaccine comes, everything is over. As it is, the moral of people is increasing. The moment the vaccine comes, everything is over.
6 months. Mr. Tyagarajan. Mr. Tyagarajan.
I think it is fiscal year 2022.
Okay.
Mr. Maitra.
12 months from now, I am not so confident of vaccine coming in 3 months. I think it will still take 9-12 months for us to deploy it to everyone.
Okay, so 12 months. Mr. Radia.
Karthik Radia, final word.
I would say 18 months because it will take some time to even distribute the vaccine. So 18 months.
Okay, so some pessimism, some optimism and some realism. Balanced panel. Thank you all very much for joining us on the broadcast on NewsX, and thanks to Dr. Batra as always for being with us as well. On that note, let's take a very short break. Happy Diwali to all of you, and of course Happy Dhanteras as well, and to our viewers. Let's take a break. Much more on the other side.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.